Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another book review from the Most Wanted series, and it's book number 7, A Nightmare on Clown Street. Oh boy. Off the bat, I want to say what I want to get across, if I had to say an opening statement about this book. This book is definitely a different experience that you won't find anywhere else in Goosebumps. Clown stories, circus stories. I mean, there are some amusement park stories sprinkled throughout Goosebumps. There are, a little bit of clown stuff sprinkled here and there in R.L. Stine's works. But in Goosebumps, this book will probably itch a scratch if you're looking for a carnival type story. How this story is laid out is very immersive, very atmospheric in that carnival setting. And for that, it stands out. But just because something is different in a franchise does not necessarily make it good. And I want to stress that because that's been like the argument to these days in media that, oh, it's different, that makes it better than everything else, right? Or at least it tries something different. You hear arguments like that. I want to address what I've noticed about this book. It's about half and half, and the reason why I put this book off, as long as I did, was I was under the impression that one of the characters in this book called Murder the Clown was in this book called When the Ghost Dog Howls, and I was going to read that before this, but then I checked the Goosebumps wiki, and that Murder the Clown in When the Ghost Dog Howls is not the same character as this. Now, Murder the Clown is apparently a fan favorite mascot, modern mascot at least. He was in the Goosebumps movie, the 2015 movie, and it seems like half the community love the cover, they love the book, they love the character of Murder, they think he's cool and creepy, think the story's great. Much power to you. And then the other half seems to be on the camp where it's more middling or not that great. And I'm kind of closer to that camp, unfortunately. I went into this wanting to like this. I knew, a little bit of, some things to expect with it. I had some elements spoiled. And I've heard some people review this book. Like Michael, Goosebumps fan, didn't have a lot good to say, but I think I'm with Michael on this one, y'all, in some regards. But that's not, that goes without saying that this book does have a lot of good elements to it. And I think a lot of you will realize that at the end of this video, that I'm going to be really fair on this book, as fair as I can be. It wasn't my cup of tea, but off the bat, would I recommend it? Actually, I would. I would recommend giving this book a try if you have not read this before we go any further, just to see if this might do something for you. Or maybe, if you're a reader that likes more atmosphere over, characters or whatever the case may be, the atmosphere in this book is enough reason to try this. Okay? So, that being said, let's get into the plot overview without giving too much away. So the main character is named Ray Gordon, and he has his nickname called Ray Gun, but that's never really used in the story. It's just introduced in the beginning as kind of like a moniker thing. So the story begins with Ray. He's home one weekend. He's working with his classmate on this science project, and the two aren't making any progress on the science project, and they feel like they have no idea what they're doing. And Ray comes up with this idea that they should leave and try to get some inspiration from this vacant lot down the road. And when his friend asks why, he's like, well, there's a circus, we should go. So the two devise a plan to sneak out of Ray's house while his parents are having like a book club meeting. And they sneak out and they head down a few blocks, and they end up at this circus with an outdoor carnival setting. And they smell the cotton candy, the popcorn. They see the flashing lights, and Ray talks to his friend that he got into circuses because of his uncle Theo, who's a clown over at Coco's Clown Academy. However, the circus that that they're going to in their town, which is Tampa, Florida. And you gotta love modern Goosebumps having Tampa, Florida stories. But he put research into a circus that was going to come to Tampa, and wanted to go see it and didn't want to miss out. So the two decide to try to make their way to go see the circus show. The problem is they have no money, and when they meet the people taking tickets at the front, they say, "Where are your tickets?" And Ray's like trying to make up a story, and of course they get shooed away. But the two decide to sneak in through the back of the circus tent to try to make it into the show anyway. And they succeed in doing so, and they encounter this guy named Tiny. And this guy named Tiny, he's like this huge giant clown guy, is very friendly with them, doesn't seem like he's trying to kick him out. And Ray tells him that, he loves circuses, and his Uncle Theo is a clown at Coco's Clown Academy. And Tiny kind of mentions something that plays later on in the story. I don't want to touch on it just yet. And Ray doesn't think anything of it. And he's excited that Tiny's going to let him to go see the show. But the problem is that Ray's father comes in and says, "I finally found you two. Where'd you guys, why'd you guys leave? I've been looking for you." And, of course they get in trouble. They get taken back to the car. His friend gets taken home. And Ray, when he gets brought home, he gets scolded by his father and his mother. And when Ray's trying to defend himself, his mom reveals that he got a letter from his Uncle Theo, and the letter basically said that he wants Ray to come to Jacksonville, Florida, where his the Coco's Clown Academy circus, which is like a all clown circus. There are different types of circuses, in case you don't know. There's mixed with trapeze artists, lion tamers and stuff, but this one is a circus that has that stuff, but they're all dressed as clowns, kind of thing. So Ray's like, "Okay, I want to go," and after his parents deliberate and kind of bicker with him, they just agree and let him go anyway. So Ray hops on a bus and heads to Jacksonville to see his uncle, and he's really excited that he gets to spend time with him and gets to see how the circus performs, and maybe he might be able to become a clown himself. So when he arrives in Jacksonville, this guy in a clown costume with an axe in his head picks him up, and turns out that's his Uncle Theo. And he goes by, his clown name is Murder the Clown. And Murder the Clown takes Ray to the grounds where the circus is, and Ray's taken back. He loves the atmosphere. He's looking around. There's dunk tanks. There's shooting, rifle shooting target things, typical carnival stuff. But when he looks over at the dunk tank, he thinks something is off, and he notices this clown is getting dunked into the tank, but then he gets sucked underneath and disappears, which freaks him out. And what makes it more unsettling is while they're walking, he encounters this guy who runs the carnival circus. His name is Mr. Ha-Ha Face. And this guy looks like a guy that's, you don't want to mess with this person. And Mr. Ha-Ha Face, talks with his uncle and Ray about Ray's stay, and I think he calls him Jack, and he's like, "My name is Ray." He's like, "Yo, we don't use first names here. You're going to end up becoming a clown." Which Theo's like, "Surprise, you're going to end up becoming a clown." And Ray's taken back by it, but he doesn't know what to think of it. So they go to the food tent. He gets to meet a few clowns that, his Uncle Theo is friends with. And he seems to be, warmed up to it. He hears about Clown Street, and he's like, "What's Clown Street? What is going on? I've heard this from the Tiny guy from the other traveling circus. What is this place? Why do all these clowns know about this place?" So it's revealed to him by his Uncle Theo when they head back to the trailers that he's not going to be staying with him. But while he's heading back to the trailer, he's walking, and all of a sudden a knife flies by his face, and he's like, "Whoa, what just happened?" And he's like, someone just tried to kill me. Like, what's going on? You got clowns disappearing in a dunk tank. You got this place called Clown Street that seems kind of mysterious. You got knives being thrown at my head. Ray's starting to feel kind of, scared. But as his Uncle Theo addresses to him that he's going to end up becoming a clown named Mr. Belly Bounce, and his roommate that he's going to be staying with named Bingo Bongo will be training him how to be a clown. So it'll be important for him to, go and, meet Bingo Bongo and, learn the ropes. So that's what he does. He goes to the trailer and he meets Bingo Bongo, and they arrange where he'll be sleeping and stuff. And Bingo kind of gives him a rundown about the place and about Mr. Ha-Ha Face, and he has a daughter named Deanna. Now, Deanna, when Ray first encounters her, he is training to become a clown the following day, and he has his clown attire on, he has his clown shoes on, he has his belly, ready to go. And there's also something else that happens, but I don't feel like I really need to touch on it. It's not really that important, but yeah, just read it yourself. So he's observing Deanna, and she's throwing knives, and he kind of puts it together that Deanna must be the one throwing the knives, right? So they're practicing so he can be prepared. He meets Deanna. He introduces himself, and he knows her secret, but she doesn't know that he knows, type of thing. And while he's training, something may happen. I don't want to spoil what happens because it kind of plays on later. But it kind of shakes him up a little bit, and he just wants to go, take it easy that night, and get ready for the next day, which is the day he has to perform. But when he goes to sleep, tries to go to sleep that night, he hears whispering, people like calling his first name, and he's like, okay, something's weird, and he tries to go outside and investigate, and he falls into fish guts and fish bones, and he's grossed out, and he doesn't know what to think of it. He starts to kind of spiral even further. He thinks that somebody's out to get him, out to mess with him. Well, later on, I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, it comes the day of the circus, and he's supposed to be, in his Mr. Belly Bounce outfit, and he gets out into the crowd. He's making everybody laugh. He's doing his thing. He's bumping into people, doing what he's supposed to do. But what had happened before that is that he woke up the next morning after the fish guts, and found his clown shoes cut with scissors. So before he can go do the circus, he had to repair his shoes. So he had Bingo Bongo help him. So he has these messed up shoes, and he's walking next to Bingo Bongo doing the routine, and he trips over his leg and knocks down Mr. Ha-Ha Face. And Mr. Ha-Ha Face gets really upset. And after the circus is over and done with, Mr. Ha-Ha Face drags Ray outside and has a talking with him, saying, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, "Oh, well, people laughed. It was funny." He goes, "But it wasn't funny. Why'd you do that?" And he's like, "It was an accident. I tripped over Bingo Bongo." And he assumed that what Ray was saying was that Bingo Bongo tripped him. And then he excuses Ray, and Ray goes off and does what he does. And when he ends up back at his place later, he's trying to find Bingo Bongo, and all of his stuff is missing. He doesn't know what happened to him. He's like, well, somebody must know the answer to this. Bingo's shtick is that he plays ping pong, and he has a ping pong table outside, and that was taken out. He had a picture of a dog that was taken. Like, all of his personal belongings were gone out of the trailer, and there was a new clown there. This brand new hire that got hired was there living as his roommate, and he's like, who are you? Where's Bingo? And he's like, I don't know who you're talking about. And he's like, well, what do you know about Clown Street? Because I guess we'll talk about it here. Before he goes back to the house, he sees Bongo get put into the same dunk tank as the clown from earlier, and he gets this idea that they just get dunk tanked as like a punishment for, making Mr. Ha Ha Face mad, and they'll just end up back at their place. But since all the stuff was missing, that something must have happened to Bingo Bongo, and he starts to put it together, and he asks the new guy what he knows about Clown Street, because what he was hearing after was that Bingo was probably sent to Clown Street. And the new guy didn't want to talk about it and pretty much fled. So he wants to go talk to his Uncle Theo about it. And he goes to meet his Uncle Theo, and there's a big plot twist involving Uncle Theo. And I guess I'll reveal it here. I mean, this is going to be a mild spoiler, I would say, because, or I guess maybe a major spoiler. I'm sorry, but the Uncle Theo that he thought was his real uncle was not his uncle. This whole time he's been around Murder the Clown. He's seen how tall he is. He's heard his voice, seen his mannerisms. And it turns out that the guy dressed as Murder the Clown is not his real uncle. It's actually this other clown that was friends with his uncle. And his, fake Uncle Theo reveals what happened to him. And he eventually reveals that he was sent to Clown Street. And before he can basically tell him what Clown Street was, something happens, of course. And Ray feels compelled to go to try to rescue his Uncle Theo. And his first idea is to basically go and try to get himself in trouble with Mr. Ha Ha Face so that he would get sent to wherever this place is. And he tries to do so, but there's a fake out with that involving Mr. Ha Ha Face's trailer. And then he bumps into Deanna, the daughter of Mr. Ha Ha Face, and she essentially reveals to him that all this stuff that's been happening to him, like the knives being thrown at him, the fish guts, the shoes, was her doing, and she was doing it as a warning to help him, to get him to leave. And he's like, why would you want me to leave? And she's like, people disappear here. It's not safe for you to be here. You should go. And now Deanna does not know the whole truth about what is going on, but she knows that bad things happen, and she must have known what happened to his Uncle Theo. So when Ray gets his idea, like he's going to put it, he finally realizes that the dunk tank is going to be the way to figure out where this Clown Street place is. He tells Deanna to come with him to the dunk tank and send him there. And while she hesitated, she decides to, honor his wishes and help him out. And he falls down the dunk tank where, Bingo Bongo and the other clown from earlier disappeared into. And he gets, sucked down this tube, shoved into this system with, running water. And he goes down in the darkness for a long time. Then he ends up in a place where there's tempered glass. He's like, am I in another tank? And then he feels something behind him, and it turns out that Deanna followed him. And Deanna's like, I don't want you to go to Clown Street by yourself. And then this is where the story just completely set, 270s in where it's like the direction of the story from here is just completely, absolutely nuts. All right. So they're in this tank. They discover that they're in a tank, but there's a squid in the tank with them. A giant squid trying to kill Ray, and the two have to fight off, Ray, the squid trying to kill Ray. And since Deanna, she deals with throwing knives and stuff, she stabs the squid and gets him to release Ray, and then they hear an applause. And they're taken out of the tank by these two clowns. And there's these two men standing there in black suits, saying that they did a good job fending off the squid. It was really entertaining. Now it's time for them to go to Clown Street. And they get taken out of the squid tank, escorted by these clowns, driven off to Clown Street, which ends up being a prison for clowns. Now, it gets better. So they go in, they go through these metal detectors, in their clown in their, whatever they're wearing, clown garments. They have some, like, mixture of clown makeup, clown tops, and street clothes, like sneakers and stuff, but they end up being escorted to a cell. And they hear these roars going on from a bear, and people are cheering, looking on in this, like, arena where these clowns are, interacting with this bear, and there's all these clowns locked up in these cells nearby. And let's just say that Ray finally finds his Uncle Theo, and he also sees Bingo Bongo, and he's excited to see his real Uncle Theo, and he's like, all right, we got to find a way out of here. And Theo's like, there is no way out of here. And Theo explains something to the two kids, Deanna and Ray, about what happens when you enter the prison that plays into the twist ending. And I kind of want to mention it here, but I'm not going to spoil what it is, because the ending, we'll get to that in a minute. So Theo basically gives a rundown about how this thing operates. So he talks about what happens when you enter the prison, and then he kind of gives backstory about this main guy. Mr. Ha-Ha Face is actually a toady for this guy called the Frightener. And the Frightener is actually just some normal guy who has lived with a lifelong fear of clowns and made a prison, and has, co-opted to, work with, traveling circus runners, kind of like Mr. Ha-Ha Face, to supply him clowns for entertainment, because most of the clowns die from the giant squid and the bears, and stuff like that. But the kicker is how they supply the prison facility is they force the clowns to go and do birthday parties. I wish I was making this up. And the guy, the Frightener, likes to go on the intercom and announce stuff, and the Frightener's like, all right, we're going to my nephew's birthday party. So he loads up all the clowns, and they come up with this idea, like, since the Frightener does this because he's afraid of clowns, maybe they should be scary at the birthday party instead of being, funny. Because there's this whole message throughout the book that they want the clowns at Coco's Clown Academy to be funny, and if you, piss off Mr. Ha-Ha Face or you stop being funny, you get sent to Clown Street. So they're like, let's be scary. So, there's security protocols when they enter the prison, but somehow a bunch of them still have, like, weapons like scissors and water jets and, fake blood. And they get to this birthday party, and they put on the facade, and they start trying to scare the kids. And the real Murder the Clown starts, like, biting kids, and he takes his axe off his head and swings it at clowns, and there's, like, fake blood flying everywhere. And all the kids are thinking it's funny. And they're like, oh, and Ray's like, oh no, we're screwed. And then the Frightener comes in because he hears all this commotion, and they take advantage of the situation and try to scare the Frightener, and they do, and he scurries off and runs off in the backyard. And since they're out in the open, and all the clowns have mutinied, they can just go home now for some reason. And that's literally how the book just handles it. They all just go home. There's a bunch of unresolved things, and when Ray ends up back home, his parents are glad to see him, and he's happy to be home. And his parents tell him to go upstairs and clean up, and there's a big twist involving that, and I'll leave it there. And that's essentially A Nightmare on Clown Street. So, let's start off with the strengths of this book. I'll be honest, Ray was just a fine character throughout the majority of the story. He did have his moments where you can clearly feel the tension going on in the story, like with the knives being thrown at him, and him falling into, like, fish guts, and him hearing about Clown Street. The paranoia within this character was prevalent, but he was mostly more one-dimensional until closer to the final act of the story, when he hears the truth from fake Uncle Theo, that his real Uncle Theo was sent to Clown Street. He turns on this hero mechanism, and I really enjoyed him in the final act of the book. because of that. He really turned on his his heroic personality traits, and I felt like I got more of his character. Honestly, if that never happened, he would have just been like one of the more blander Goosebumps characters. But that was cool. The setting and the atmosphere was really great in this book. The carnival atmosphere, like I said, if you have not read this book, this is definitely a reason to try this because it's very immersive. It's very expedient too. It's not like a waste so much time at like a normal neighborhood for like a few chapters. No, it basically just throws you right into carnival from like chapter 2 throughout the rest of the story. The clowns you meet throughout this story, I didn't touch on all of them, but there are some funny bits with some clowns here and there. Like some of the jokes are really great. And some iconic scenes from this book I took away from is in the final act when they're at the birthday party and Murder takes his axe and swings it and he's like it looks like he's trying to chop up other clowns, but there's fake blood spewing. That scene was nuts. And the kids laughing was just the cherry on top. I thought that was great. And probably when I think about this book, I'm going to think about that scene specifically. And how shocking the final act when they get to Clown Street and that whole revelation is just absolutely it's crazy, honestly. But not necessarily in a good way, and I'll get into that in just a sec. But yeah, there are some positives with this, okay? But the negatives, the negatives to this book, I don't know where to start. There are some cliche moments with dealing with the clowns. There are some jokes that are really funny, and there are some things that really just don't make sense. A lot of the stuff with the clowns feels rudimentary, stock standard stereotype clown stuff, and that kind of got kind of cringy here and there in the story. But there are some unresolved things in the book. Basically, by the midway point, all right, or I guess by the big revelation about fake Uncle Theo, when that revelation happens, it's essentially revealed that Mr. Ha-Ha Face forced him to dress as Murder the Clown. For what reason? It was never really explicitly said. It was to be implied that there was this intention that Ray was going to visit, and maybe Ha-Ha Face had this intention with Ray. But given the finale we got, I now have to view that as just a shoehorn to give Ray a reason to go into the dunk tank to go to Clown Street. There's no real reason why Mr. Ha-Ha Face made fake Uncle Theo act like Murder the Clown. There's no reason. It's just there because it fits. It feels like Stein wrote the ending. It's definitely one of those books where he wrote the ending first, and he was like, all right, I got all this, but how am I going to connect this? And he just came up with something completely random and just try to force it in there. It hurts. It's so forced it hurts. That revelation is just, like I said, it's just so forced. And stemming from that is logic issues going into, how Ray handles getting to Clown Street and getting into the dunk tank at least, which has its ups and downs, but that when they find out that they're in a second tank and that story just shifts and you get giant squids and then clowns taking you to a clown prison is just absolutely insane. And a lot of the, I don't even know if I can say it's so bad it's good. It's just really bad. It's so bad and so nonsensical that I really don't have words to describe it. It's so out there left field. It's one of the most WTF final acts I have ever read in a Goosebumps book. And I can say that pretty confidently. And I view that as a negative because it just really, the main bad guy, he's introduced in the final act, and the main bad guy is more just a really big wimp. And there's, Mr. Ha-Ha Face is way more scarier than this guy. And why he would work for this guy makes no sense because it's never made to make sense. There's no real tangible connection to that. And how it goes down to the logic of how they enter the prison. There's like metal detectors and stuff. And all these clowns still have weapons. How do they still have weapons? If you go through metal detectors, you go through security, wouldn't you take their weapons? And not to mention, the revelation Uncle Theo made. Okay, I'll touch on it. It has to deal with part of the clown attire. I'll just leave it at that. And he told this to Ray. So when Ray gets home, not to mention the plot convenience about how they handle the Frightener and they all just magically go home. But when Ray gets home, it's like he just either did not listen to what his Uncle Theo told him, or maybe forgot, or maybe, Stein wrote this part and was like, I probably should include this, hint here, because, people are going to say like, oh, well, that's just a random twist. It involves something about the clown attire that's kind of remained with Ray. And for it being a twist, it's really stupid because the book tells you already that's going to happen. So the twist gets spoiled. It spoils itself. I didn't mean to make this video so long, but yeah, this book, it has its clear problems, y'all. It does. It's typical for the most wanted books. I think this book is a little bit above, something like How I Met My Monster or The Lizard of Oz. But it's like right there in the same ballpark as something like Trick or Trap. It's not that great to me. Now there's other opinions out there. It's just not something I really liked. I mean, there's so many logical things, unresolved things, questionable things, cliche stuff, kind of cringy jokes, and then the twist spoils itself. So, from a 0 to 5 star basis, collectively, I decided to deduct 1.5 points off and give this book a 3.5 out of 5. And this is like a C- to me. It's still on that, good. It's like a low good, kind of average. I would recommend this still to people, but I want to go out of my way to. You know what I mean? And the only reason why I did that was because of that scene in the final act was just bonkers, and I got a chuckle out of it. And I really like seeing Ray turn on more of his personality near the end. If it wasn't for those things, this book probably would have been a D, possibly even an F tier for me. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on A Nightmare on Clown Street. And let me know down in the comments section, what do you guys think about this book? Do you love this book or do you hate this? I'm dying to know, and I'll see you next time.